In November of 1953, a scientist named Frank Olson attended a work retreat with his colleagues. Someone spiked his after-dinner drink. He didn't know it. 9 days later, he was dead, having fallen from the 10th floor window of a New York hotel room. For over 20 years, his family was told it was suicide, brought on by a nervous breakdown. It wasn't until 1975 that they learned the truth. Frank Olson had been dosed with LSD by his own government, as part of a program so secret that its own director once ordered every file on it destroyed. That program had a name: MKUltra. Chapter 1. A Nation Afraid of Its Own Mind. To understand why the CIA built a mind control program, you have to understand how afraid America was in the early 1950s. The Korean War had just produced a disturbing phenomenon: captured American soldiers appearing in propaganda films, denouncing their own country, seemingly of their own free will. The press had a word for it: brainwashing. Whether or not it was real science or just old-fashioned coercion and isolation, Washington believed it was real, and that terrified them. On April 13, 1953, CIA Director Allen Dulles gave a speech warning that the Soviets had turned the human brain itself into a battlefield. If the enemy could reprogram a mind, he argued, America needed to understand how, and to get there first. That fear didn't come out of nowhere. 2 earlier, smaller programs had already been quietly testing the waters: Project Bluebird, which explored whether hypnosis could make American agents resistant to interrogation, and Project Artichoke, which asked a far darker question: could a person be conditioned to attempt an assassination without hesitation and without remembering why? MKUltra, approved in April 1953, would absorb both programs and go much further. Chapter 2. The Architect. At the center of it all was a chemist named Sidney Gottlieb, a man who would later earn the nickname the Black Sorcerer. Gottlieb ran the CIA's technical services staff, and it's actually his division that gives the program its name. MK stood for the division, and Ultra was simply the CIA's highest classification level at the time. Gottlieb had a mandate and almost no oversight. Over the next decade, MKUltra would fund roughly 150 separate research efforts, spread across at least 44 universities, along with hospitals, prisons, and pharmaceutical labs in the U.S. and Canada. Much of the funding was laundered through front foundations, so that the doctors and scientists doing the work often had no idea the CIA was behind it. The toolkit was broad: electroshock, sensory deprivation, hypnosis, sleep deprivation. But the centerpiece was LSD, along with barbiturates and amphetamines, sometimes given to the same subject within minutes of each other. One drug to plunge them into unconsciousness, the other to snap them violently back out of it. Some subjects volunteered. A great many did not. Chapter 3. Ravenscrag nowhere did this go further than a psychiatric hospital in Montreal called the Allen Memorial Institute, nicknamed Ravenscrag by locals. Its director was Dr. Ewan Cameron, a respected figure who would later become president of the American Psychiatric Association. Cameron believed mental illness could be cured by essentially erasing a patient's existing personality and rebuilding it from scratch. To do that, he developed 2 techniques. The first was psychic driving, strapping patients into headphones and forcing them to listen to a single looped phrase, sometimes hundreds of thousands of times, in an attempt to reprogram their thinking. The second, which he called depatterning, combined massive doses of electroconvulsive therapy with heavy psychedelic drugs, sometimes paired with a paralytic drug called curare, the same toxin South American hunters once used on poison arrows, to induce total helplessness in the patient. According to later reporting, one patient endured 101 straight days of psychic driving. The clinical notes recorded no improvement. Many of Cameron's patients had come to him for ordinary anxiety or postpartum depression. They left, if they left at all, with their memories in fragments. One of those patients was the mother of journalist Elizabeth Nixon, who spent years piecing together what happened at Ravenscrag and eventually published her findings in a book called The Monkey Puzzle. Chapter 4, Hollywood Endings, Real Beginnings. Not every MKUltra story ends in tragedy. Some just end somewhere strange. In 1959, a Stanford graduate student named Ken Casey volunteered for a paid CIA-funded LSD study. He liked what he felt. Casey went on to write One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and later began hosting what he called acid tests. LSD-fueled parties soundtracked by a then-unknown local band called the Grateful Dead. Those parties are widely credited as a spark that helped ignite 1960s counterculture. It's a strange twist of history. A covert government experiment designed to weaponize a drug may have accidentally helped launch the very movement that would go on to distrust the government most. Meanwhile, on the other side of the country, a different kind of experiment was underway, one with far less music. Chapter 5. Operation Midnight Climax. Under a sub-project nicknamed Operation Midnight Climax, the CIA set up safe houses in San Francisco and New York. Government-paid sex workers would lure unsuspecting men back to these apartments, where agents would secretly dose their drinks with LSD and observe the results from behind two-way mirrors. There was almost no scientific oversight. Agents later admitted the operation had devolved into something closer to a party than a study, with the agents running it using drugs and the women's services themselves. One agent, George White, wrote candidly to Gottlieb about the assignment, essentially bragging that it let him behave with total impunity, blessed by the agency itself. The men targeted were ordinary civilians. None of them had agreed to any of it. Chapter 6. The Unraveling. By the early 1970s, paranoia was already consuming Washington. Watergate had just broken, and the country was in no mood to trust its intelligence agencies. In 1973, newly appointed CIA Director Richard Helms, sensing the walls closing in, ordered nearly all MKUltra records destroyed. He nearly succeeded. But a set of financial records had been misfiled in a separate budget office and survived the purge. In 1974, journalist Seymour Hersh, already famous for exposing the My Lai massacre, published a New York Times story revealing that the CIA had illegally spied on American anti-war activists. It was a different scandal, but it kicked open a door. Investigators pulling that thread eventually found the surviving MKUltra documents. That discovery led to the Church Committee, alongside the Pike Committee and the Rockefeller Commission, 3 separate investigations into decades of intelligence abuses. In 1975, Sidney Gottlieb himself was called to testify before Congress. Asked whether it troubled him that unwitting American citizens had been drugged, his answer was chilling in its plainness. He said he didn't recall being especially preoccupied by that question. The hearings led directly to Executive Order 11,905, signed by President Gerald Ford in 1976, which restructured U.S. intelligence oversight and explicitly banned experimentation on human subjects without consent. Frank Olson's family eventually received a rare personal apology from both President Ford and CIA Director William Colby, along with a settlement of $750,000. Worth close to $9 million today. Chapter 7. What's Left Behind. MKUltra never fully disappeared from the culture. It just changed shape. Shows like Stranger Things borrow its imagery, even if they draw more directly from other Cold War legends like the Montauk Project. The Truman Show echoes its deeper anxiety, a person's entire reality secretly engineered by unseen hands. The program has also become a magnet for wilder theories, that Charles Manson was somehow a product of it, or that Ted Kaczynski's violence traces back to psychologically brutal experiments he took part in as a Harvard undergraduate in the late 1950s, under a study run by psychologist Henry Murray. That study was real and, by many accounts, genuinely abusive, but a direct causal line to the Unabomber's later crimes has never been established, and it's worth being careful not to draw one for him. What we do know for certain is this. For over 2 decades, the United States government ran secret experiments on its own citizens, prisoners, patients, students, sex workers, unsuspecting clients, without their consent, and in most cases, without their knowledge. Some of them died. Many more were never the same. The files that survive are only the ones Helms failed to burn. Whatever the full scope of MKUltra actually was, we will likely never